Have you checked the children? Your little mad sometimes.
Hi, I'm Chucky. Wanna play?
Sometimes. That is better.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Long days and pleasant nights, fellow travelers along the path of the beam. Jaime and Fuego here, and if it please you, join me for a little bit of palaver on Hail to Stephen King, my favorite author, as you can see by all of those tomes behind me there. And so, yes, I had previously reviewed the first season of Under the Dome. I am notoriously known for not being the biggest fan of the source material, but I will at least give that first CBS season credit for the fact that they kind of held it in check, you know? They added some characters, they altered some mythology, changed up a few things, but it still very much felt like the book and a direct adaptation. However, and yes, welcome to the horror show, obviously, the second season of this show is where they really pull, at least in my personal estimation, a Castle Rock. Yeah, and that being the series on Hulu, and they just deviate so much from the source material that I feel like it significantly hinders the proceedings. And so, yes, if you were a fan of, both the book, because I know there's a lot of Under the Dome apologists out there, love you guys, and, respectful about art being subjective and stuff like that. But the first season still felt relatively strong for me. Second season here, once again, Brian K. Vaughan, he was the one who initially developed it, and then you have, all kinds of very noteworthy television people, like Game of Thrones people, Bender, and, various others that are behind the proceedings here. But this one is where, especially about halfway through the show, this particular season, I think it was episode 7, that they go batshit crazy, and they deviate so much that, whereas I had a lot of facepalm moments leading up to that particular moment this season, this is where they go, I guess, off the rails would probably be a good way to put it. But I'm still here to objectively, art being subjective, as I said, try to cover this as best I can. So, second season of Under the Dome. First season was a big-time success for CBS, and they're very happy about, even the fact that some things were changed, the fact that it was decent ratings, sort of situation for them. But season 2 was where stuff started to change, despite the fact that Stephen King not only guested in the first episode of season 2, which is entitled Heads Will Roll, but he also scripted it. So he was working within the confines of this new, just another turn of the wheel, and he makes it very obvious in this first episode with the death of one character in particular who survives in the original book, who I actually thought did a tremendous job in the first season and was one of the just hallmark awesome characters. I thought, terrific acting from that, particular person, without spoiling things, obviously. I'm dancing around the issue. I'm not trying to spoil the hell out of this. There's a lot of surprises. There are callbacks to the book, there are alterations from the book, and yet I'm very much trying, just like I did with, The Mist on Spike, to just say this is a different turn of the wheel, and it's a, alternate level of the tower, and so very much like we got, if we're talking print, and, the difference between Desperation and The Regulators, it's the exact same sort of formula and scenario here with this incarnation of Under the Dome. But I just didn't like what they did. And my biggest issue with this show, I guess I can't mention that. We do have, Sloppy Sam shows up. He's a character in the second season. He plays a pivotal part in the book as far as trying to just weather the situation and get through it in the climax. But, I don't even want to just jump on all of this stuff. My biggest thing, which is what I tweeted about, about the second season specifically of this show, is the fact that, yes, I can spoil aspects from the first season, and the fact that Jim Rennie kills a lot of people in the first season of this show. And he frames Dale Barbara, our proverbial hero, for those, nasty executions, basically. And yet, even though Barbie is right there, about to be killed at the beginning of this season. We kind of skirt past that with the quickness. And not only do we skirt past that, we skirt past them trying to actually figure out who the real killer was. And so, as I tweeted about, my biggest issue with this show is the fact that there is a lack of character accountability. It really is the most... It's the biggest nastiness of this show, and really indicative of poor writing, you know? And it just bothered me consistently. There are plots to kill people in this town, whether with like larger like swine flu sort of stuff, or just directly. And there are in fact characters that are murdered, and yet we're supposed to just forget about that fact, you know? Obviously the biggest being Jim, and that's really the only one that I can make mention of without spoiling stuff that happens in this particular season. But we have the implementation of a couple new characters, one being Rebecca, this science teacher, who, she's terrible. I mean, the acting from none of these people are particularly bad, but the fact that we write so many of them in this as being wishy-washy, back and forth, like they're good, they're bad, they're somewhere in the middle, and yes, shades of gray. I have praised the fact that they made the Jim and Junior, to a lesser degree, more interesting characters because of the fact that they weren't so cut and dry in that regard. But man, this show just can't seem to figure out a lot of its characters. And even early on, before we have a lot of questions and guesstimation and the back and forth that I mentioned, there's like wonder about if one character is gonna, you know, just romantically change things up and so on and so forth. And just, it's so convoluted at the end of the day. Under the Dome Season 2 went straight up soap opera status, and even when there's big stuff that transpires, like magnetism from the dome, to weather changes, all of these different things, they're all really figured out a lot of the time relatively quickly without major just reverberating repercussions. And so that's one of my biggest issues about this show, is that it doesn't have as much weight as you would like. It really, really doesn't. And just to consult the notes just a little bit further, so there is some character alteration, okay, especially with Sloppy Sam, you know, finally making his presence known. There's really a lot of additional stuff that corresponds with this unknown girl who shows up right after Julia drops the egg into the lake at the end of Season 1. Without spoiling stuff, it's very tough, but there's a lot that's not explained, and when it does finally become explained, it still just feels trivial and lazy as far as the writing process goes. The thing is, I still like a lot of the actors in this. I like Nori, I like Joe, I especially like you know, actor who plays Big Jim, and you know, Julia, you know, Barbie. They're very solid. I will never be able to get past this very different turn of the wheel for Junior, and yet all of these characters, they're at odds with one another at one point, and then they're working together at another point. It just, and especially with the aforementioned bloodshed, it doesn't make sense. If Wookiees live on Endor, you must acquit! And this show just dropped the ball so drastically and insanely in that regard. But as far as a few other bits, I mean, and this is once again where I'm trying not to spoil stuff too much, but those who have watched will definitely know. When we get parental involvement from a couple characters in particular who were definitely not in the book, it just seems very forced in, and there is a prophetic aspect that is incorporated in, and it was definitely, like, I guess, very mildly hinted at in the previous season, but they go full-blown in Season 2 with this, as far as just being able to see the dome having come down and all of that different stuff, and boy does it just doesn't work, man. It does not work, and it's not compelling storytelling, especially with the re-implementation of certain characters, and it's it's borderline aggravating as the series goes on. And yes, I mean, I was okay enough with the first 6, like 7 episodes, but the back half of this season is just mind-numbingly aggravating in a lot of ways. And once again, it's just kind of crappy storytelling. I feel like writers' rooms don't always necessarily work, you know, because there's different people scripting each episode in this particular season. And so there's one episode where a character's motivations seem just very evidently laid down, and then there's another one where they feel like they have reverted back to prior motivations, and then there's other ones where they have seemingly had a change of heart, turned over a new leaf. It definitely happens with Jim. It's like Jim's good, Jim is okay, like just back and forth, and you can't seem to figure characters out. And then also those hints about different romantic intertwinements. That's another big thing that this show plays on, and where you definitely have to say it went super soap opera in this, and to an aggravating degree. Character accountability being another thing that I mentioned, in the fact that there are characters who kill people, and yet they're seemingly everything is okay. You know, a few episodes later, they're like, oh, well, you were misguided, or you had this, like, in the heat of the moment sort of situation, and it's just, it stinks, man. It's just bad television. You can see why the ratings were dwindling in the degree that they did. And it's so funny because of the fact that I have had my Films That Forgot the Face of Their Father series here on the channel previously, and yet this is most definitely something I would have included in that particular just sector of coverage. And yet I found more redeeming qualities in a lot of those films. Like, sometimes they come back again in Pet Sematary 2 than I did within this. I very much feel the way that I did about the first Castle Rock series season. Second season, yeah, it was a little bit of an improvement and stuff like that. But I just, boy, I am honestly dreading Season 3, and I should let everybody know that Season 3 will be covered on Saturday, September 12th, so I was originally wanting these to just, you know, correspond with, you know, 5-year anniversary, 5-year anniversary, 5-year anniversary. This is one that I was just kind of dreading revisiting, and, you know, not because of the fact that a lady that I was seeing at the time that just loved this show and binged through it. She hadn't read the book, though, so perhaps those who haven't read the book, they found more merits within it. That's fine. You know, once again, and you know, opinions are you know, there for everybody to have, and in every due accord and such. And you know, art is subjective. That, you know, point that I beat home constantly. But this felt like a slog. It really, really did. And so, since a lot of people have said the third season is even worse, and I'm just, you know, kind of wondering where it goes from there. Even Stephen King, you know, even Sai King said that he was not the biggest fan of this particular adaptation. He even went to Twitter to say that he would love, like, Netflix or somebody to give a more accurate adaptation in comparison with what we got here. The fact that they implement a sentience, you know, like an awareness of the dome, I have major problems with, and this is once again where, you know, you have to separate yourself from the source material, but yet it's so tough because it's completely illogical, it's not really explained very well, and to just everything from Dottie showing up to Angie showing up to all of these different characters in various forms and stuff, and they're talking to, you know, characters that are, you know, having these crises of faith or whatever, and yet there's also moments where, like, Julia and Jim go and they try to talk to the dome as if they're, like, imploring it, they're pleading with it. It's insane, it's inane, it's just completely nonsensical, and once again, it's tough to separate yourself, especially when, you know, you weren't the biggest fan of the source material previously. But yeah, nonetheless, I definitely cannot recommend this, aside from those who are big fans of the source material, and they're very cool with a Regulators type spin on seeing different characters in drastically altered situations, which is what we got here. I think I really hit the predominance of my points. Okay, Okay, spoilers right here, right now, and a very brief little bit. Okay, you had your chance. Man, the fact that they have people escaping the dome through these, like, portal sort of situations, the Melanie situation with her just, being resurrected seemingly by the dome, the correspondence with the egg, so much of this just didn't work for me, man. It did not. It was lame, and it was poorly explained, and you were just supposed to go along for the ride and seemingly assume it's all okay and whatever. King did... Okay, as much as I have been cruel and a little mean at times to Under the Dome and the fact that it's one of my least favorite Stephen King novels, I will at least say, absence of Rusty here, what transpires with Linda, there is a mentality with the writing team behind this show where it was legit like, well, the viewers aren't going to remember like X amount of episodes before, so we don't necessarily need to. And that, I mean, it's no more evident than with the fact that Jim killed a ton of people in the first season and then frames Barbie for it. And yeah, it's just completely forgotten. And Rebecca and Jim are gonna kill a chunk of the population. And then it's just forgotten and forgiven. And it's one of the biggest sins of this show. And it just drives me absolutely off the wall. There are few Side King adaptations. I think it's because of the fact that there's so much more that I needed to watch for this. So much more of a time dedication that its faults become so much more evident. It's like the rising, to the surface, the sort of situation. And yeah, I am just so bugged by this. Sam can kill Angie, and yet it's all forgiven because of the fact that Junior's mother predicted it. I'm sorry, guys, and I rarely ever take it to this particular level, but this show is really stupid, and or was, and and rightfully so. I'm sorry. I feel bad for even giving such just condemnation, I guess, but man, this show is really rough, guys, and yeah, I'm not looking forward to the third season, but I have to strive through it, forge forward to cover it for all of you. But this is really what I was expecting when I was doing all of those films that forgot the face of their father, because Under the Dome, unfortunately, reprehensibly did that. So, I've been Jaime and Fuego. Sorry for the negativity, not trying to really just inject that as much as I did, but it's just, yeah, the show has frustrated me. You can find more on all social media sectors like Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, here on the YouTubies. And as I said before, I don't know if you can look forward to the coverage of the third season of this show from me, but it will probably just impart some insight, so to speak. That's going to be going up on the 12th of September, Saturday, September 12th. And next week, we are going to be seeing the culmination of my breakdown of the Stephen King film adaptations, and we are working on an upcoming panel for Phoenix FearCon that is going to have some very special guests, and I am supremely looking forward to. Still trying to confirm everything as far as that goes, but yes, exceedingly excited. And yes, make sure to like, share, subscribe here on The Horror Show. And yeah, all of the patronage and just viewership over the course of these 200 plus episodes has meant a lot. So I have been Fuego, y'all have been Rad Status, and until the Wheel of Ka comes around once more, I shall say hasta luego, Sin Amigos, constant readers and viewers alike in this particular situation. Say thank you for spending some time with me. I'm hopeful that we share more of this palaver sooner rather than later, and until then, make sure to stay scared and read Stephen King. As far as this one goes, definitely read Under the Dome instead of watching this silly show.